We reach now chapter 6, the destruction of Christian ethics. Interesting, isn't it? In the past, it was the communists, especially the Soviet Union, who wanted to conquer Western society through moral decay and the destruction of the family. Today, it is rather the other way around. The West wants to infiltrate the East, especially the Eastern European countries and Russia in particular, through moral decay, genderism and perversions of all kinds to gain world power. It is for the new world order. How is it possible that the United States, where up to 35% of the population once professed to be evangelical Christians, has fallen so far, so much that today, even in the USA, true Christians are coming under increasing pressure, at least in certain states. The Clintons and Barack Obama in particular have contributed significantly to this deterioration. How did it get this far? Well, who's surprised? They, the Clintons, Obama, the Bushes, and their ilk are all members of secret society, Freemasons and or Skull and Bones. Allow me to ask a personal question that has really been bothering me for some time. How is it that almost all American presidents, whether from the so-called Democratic or Republican Party, were or are Freemasons? Have these evangelicals been asleep for decades, if not more than a century? Admittedly, Freemasonry is a secret society, and it is important to realize that its members are not officially known. In Wikipedia, under famous Freemasons, only those who are already or long since deceased are listed. It is even the case that the members of the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry do not know who the members of the upper degrees are or what they do. See the order Martin Hohl, Wirtz, Freimaurerei, Wurzeln, Ziele, Hintergründe, Lichtzeichen Verlag, 7th edition, 2010. And so it is that many a Freemason's eyes only open later, when he ascends to higher degrees and he realizes that in his order he is ultimately not serving God, but rather Lucifer, Satan. Perhaps even fewer of them realize that in the highest degrees, human sacrifices are even offered to Lucifer. Here are a few remarks and quotes from famous personalities who know what they are talking about. Chapter 7. Occultism, secret rites, and even human sacrifices. For a long time, anyone who dared to point out abuses, the existence of pedophile rings, Pizzagate, secret societies where even ritual murders, especially child abuse, including ritual sacrifices, are committed, was immediately lumped into the corner of conspiracy theorists. And people who still dare to do this are threatened or boycotted in their activities, such as, for example, the German musicians Xavier Naidoo. That was also the case somehow for DJ Avicii. Also he made a video about it. In 2018, he died under mysterious circumstances in Muscat, Oman. It was said that he had committed suicide. I read this among other pages in www hinzu.com 2022/11/27/pedophile-problem-der-elite. The well-known presenter Tucker Carlson, who was fired by Fox TV not long ago because he was becoming increasingly dangerous to the elitist circles with his millions of followers, says the following. The media has no interest in reporting on the sexualization of children. Their interest, and it's characteristically a very intense interest, is to destroy anyone who complains about or even notices that the sexualization of children. They tell us that if we notice it, it's an attack on the LGBT community. The well-known film star, director and Oscar winner Mel Gibson, who knows Hollywood inside out, is admirably courageous. He dropped a real bombshell. I found this also in www.hinzu, among other pages. He says this. I always make sign when it's a quote. In a shocking expose, film star Mel Gibson has blown the lid off the epidemic of parasites who control Hollywood and are involved in child sacrifice and pedophilia. The Braveheart star said that every studio in Hollywood is bought and paid for with the blood of innocent children, adding that the most valuable currency is the blood of babies. While in London promoting his latest role in Daddy's Home 2, Gibson described entertainment industry elites as the enemy of humanity who feast on the blood of innocent children. He said, key players in the film business get their kicks from destroying the sanctuary of children, as they thrive on breaking every God-given taboo known to mankind. They have a blatant disregard for the welfare of the people. To them, destroying people's lives is just a play. The more pain they can cause, the greater the thrill. Children are just a livelihood for them. They feed on pain and fear, and the younger the better. These people follow their own religion and use it as moral guide. This is not the kind of religious teaching that you as humans would ever hear of. They perform satanic rituals. We show picture number 15 that are sick and completely at odds with the moral fabric that binds most patriotic Americans. It's hard to grasp, I know, and I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but Hollywood is an institutionalized pedophile ring. They use and abuse children for their own sick spiritual beliefs, if you can even call them that. I don't fully understand it myself, but they harvest these children for their energy and feast on their blood. They don't do it mercifully either. They scare the hell out of them before they sacrifice them. The more innocent the child, the more scared they are. The more they thrive on it. What does that mean? They don't do this as a form of artistic expression. They harvest the blood of children and eat their flesh because they believe it gives them some kind of life force. My personal note, such practices are well known, for example, in animist circles in Africa. If the child suffered mentally and physically when he died, then that gives them extra life force. In French, force vitale. That's what they are looking for. the force vital, the vital force of another person they kill in order to enrich yourself interiorly. I don't understand why they do that. They continue, but that's what they do, says Mel Gibson. Most of us have a moral compass to guide us through life, don't we? These people don't have it. Or if they do, it points in the opposite direction. That means in the wrong direction. End of quote, Mel Gibson. Now, on that picture number 15, or figure number 15, or image, this has been taken by infiltrators, secret infiltrators, in the so-called Bohemian Grove in California, where high personalities and celebrities practice occultism and Satanism. At this point, I would like to draw your attention to the recently released film by the famous actor Jim Caviezel, Sound of Freedom. The film is said to be the #1 film in US cinema. Why do you think this film is deliberately not mentioned in our mainstream? Are we really just conspiracy theorists? No, dear ones. This alone indicates that the mainstream media, behind which the elites are themselves involved in these crimes. Legitime Dutch CH writes as follows: Jim Caviezel, best known for his role as Jesus in The Passion of Christ, was a guest in the War Room to promote his new film, Sound of Freedom, from Angel Studios. The film is based on a true story that exposes the darkness of child trafficking. Caviezel worked with several former federal agents and 30 Navy SEALs while filming in Colombia. During the interview, Jim Caviezel implicated several US agencies in child sex trafficking and worse, end quote. By the way, if you want to find out more about what Freemasonry is all about and also understand English, you should definitely look at Altian Child's YouTube program. In his more than 5-hour-long contribution, the former rock musician shows what goes on in Freemasonry and Illuminati circles. Altian Childs won the 2nd season of the casting show X Factor. He used to belong to the secret society of Freemasonry, but then converted to Jesus Christ and renounced Freemasonry. In this video, he denounces the worldwide conspiracy of the secret society of Freemasons and shows many pictures and photographs of artists, musicians, actors, and politicians who were or are involved in Freemasonry. The Beatles, Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, Rihanna, Beyoncé, Miley Cyrus, Tom Hanks, the famous rapper Jay-Z, the British Royal Court, the former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison also, and many other celebrities were or are Freemasons who recognize each other with symbolical signs and gestures. Here only 3 examples. The famous pop singers Lady Madonna and Lady Gaga, as well as the Beatles, John Lennon, band leader of the Beatles. First, picture number 16. All those 3 confessed to having sold their soul to the devil to be successful. On picture number 16, you see on the left side, Lady Gaga with the all-seeing eye and the 666 hand gesture. You see? Here and here, 6, 6, 6. the number of the beast, the Antichrist. On the right side, you see the famous pop singer Madonna. She performed in a satanic Baphomet disguise during halftime of the 2012 American Super Bowl. In the middle, you see the symbol for Baphomet, which is somehow a symbol for Satan, Lucifer, with the horns. Then, picture number 17, you see the Beatles. John Lennon confessed having made a pact with the devil. He said, "I know the Beatles will be a success like no other band. I know it for sure, because I sold my soul to Satan for this success." John Lennon, 1962. I can only say with big regret, what a tragedy when people sell their souls to the devil for a few years of success and fame and are thus eternally lost. The following warning from Jesus applies to these people in a special way. I quote the Bible, New Testament, Matthew chapter 16, verse 26. "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his life?" In Greek original, psyche, that means his soul. Or, "What can a man give as a ransom for his life? For the Son of Man," that's Jesus, "will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each one according to his deeds." Do we understand what that means? Because of a few years of success and wealth on earth, so many people sell their souls and are eternally lost. The most terrible Bible passage I personally know is written in the last book of the Bible, Revelation chapter 14, verses 9 to 11. I quote, "If anyone worships the beast," that's the Antichrist, "and his image, and receives the mark on his forehead or on his hand, he too will drink of the wine of God's wrath, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his wrath. And he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and the Lamb." Lamb stands for Jesus Christ, who died for our sins on the cross. Continue. "And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. And those who worship the beast and his image have no rest, day or night, forever and ever." So I can only say, not long before he was shot by one of his admirers, John Lennon proudly said in an interview that the Beatles were more famous than Jesus and that all four were anti-Christian. How sad, yet all four are said to have grown up in Christian families. By the way, Catholic and Anglican. How deluded you must be to accept eternal damnation for a few years of wealth and fame. We come to chapter 8. The New World Order and total control. Now we come back to the Illuminati and the Freemasons. The goal of these secret societies is, as already mentioned, the Novus Ordo Secularum, the New World Order. Yes, unfortunately, Russia has remained a dictatorship to this day. China too, only much worse. China, today's paragon of total control through millions of surveillance cameras and the social point system. Unfortunately, the once Christian West is also taking giant strides toward a total dictatorship. Due the green passport, without which it will soon no longer be possible to move around, the EU, European Union, is already a de facto dictatorship. All the decisions of the elite are increasingly being forced upon the member states. Anyone who resists, such as Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary in particular, is threatened with retaliation measures, financial cuts, and so on. In the USA, Donald Trump is not the only one claiming that he was not re-elected in 2020 due to electoral fraud. Many in Brazil are also convinced that the conservative President Jair Messias Bolsonaro, 2019 to 2022, was only not re-elected because of electoral fraud in favor of the former socialist President Lula, who, by the way, spent 580 days in prison for corruption after his first term. I have a Swiss friend who is living in Brazil, and he told me that he is convinced that there was electoral fraud in Brazil also. Anyway, be that as it may, the USA is and remains the biggest warmonger. Donald Trump was the only person in a long time not to start a war, but the mainstream demonizes him of all people. Why do you think? We are constantly being lied to by the media. This time, however, they have not managed to prevent Donald Trump's re-election through manipulation. The USA constantly accuses the Russians and Chinese of being hegemonistic. The only question is, who is the biggest hegemonist? Bürger for Bürger, in English that would be citizens for citizens, in their newsletter of 4th January 2022 here in Switzerland, states that the former US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that China poses the most urgent and long-term challenge to the international order. You remember Blinken, the previous foreign minister of the United States, now it's Rubio. Beijing corrected Blinken's speech. It would have consisted of lies, they say. In reality, the USA posed the greatest challenge to the world. The rules-based international order proposed by the United States means an order based on US rules that serve to maintain Washington's interest and hegemony. The USA, which has arbitrarily broken any rules on numerous occasions, have no right to talk about rules. The Chinese diplomat added that the USA would only abide by rules if they served its interest and hegemony, but this would completely disregard them if they did not. I, Roland Klinger, am afraid this Chinese diplomat was telling the truth, even though his own country, along with the USA, is certainly one of the most hegemonistic powers nowadays. Conclusion. Russia is a dictatorship. China is even worse. Above all, China is exploiting many countries in Africa, South America, and Asia economically, and is also pushing more and more towards the West militarily. America, ruled by Luciferian secret society members allied with the United Kingdom, UK, which is also ruled by the Freemasons, and the European Union, which is beholden to them, and NATO, brackets, by the way, infiltrated by straw men or puppets, has long been the greatest threat to human freedom, in my opinion. Be that as it may, the current struggle between the various power blocks for world domination correspond exactly to the predictions of the prophet Daniel, particularly in Daniel chapter 11, verses 40 to 45. At the end of time, the Western Bloc, the Roman Empire of the end time that is to be resurrected, will invade the Middle East and set out on a foray into Africa, where upon armies from the north, Russia, in Ezekiel 38 to 39, called Gog and Magog from the country of Rosh, and the east, see Revelation chapter 16 verse 12, the kings of the rising sun, they will then march in, and then the Antichrist will find his end through the intervention of Jesus Christ at his return. You can read that in Revelation chapter 19 verses 11 to 21, and in the epistle of 2 Thessalonian epistle of Paul, chapter 2 verse 8. Jesus Christ will destroy the Antichrist when he comes back. This is called the Battle of Armageddon. You find that expression only in Revelation 16 verse 16. You see a figure number 18. This should somehow depict Jesus coming back on the clouds, and you see on earth all these armies. So I found that picture in www.burningpointministries.com. I always show the source below the picture in question. We come now to chapter 9. Can or will Donald Trump stop the downward spiral? Question mark. Whether this will change for the better since the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States for a second term will soon become clear. For now, there is reason for hope, as immediately after taking office, Trump signed several executive orders reversing previous anti-Christian orders issued by Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Time will tell whether Trump will honor his promise to do his part to end the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. At the moment when I am speaking and reading this, my own notes, it doesn't seem like that. But anyway, we will see. Donald Trump's inauguration also appears to be more promising for Israel than the term of office of Joe Biden, who, according to recent newspapers, was honored with the title Master Mason with full honors by the Prince Hall Masonic Grand Lodge of South Carolina shortly after leaving office as president. Biden had always represented the values of the Grand Lodge, they say. Quote, brotherly love, caring, and truth. What a pathetic hypocrisy. Well, Biden is supposed to be Catholic, since Pope Francis, a Rotarian from Buenos Aires, is also a Freemason, or was a Freemason, meanwhile, I should say. It shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that Joe Biden is too. Once again, he shows his true colors. Chapter 10. Censorship and the end of freedom of opinion. I read. It is important to realize that as soon as someone exposes the subversive machinations of the conspirators, the supporters and promoters of the New World Order, they are defamed as conspiracy theorists and, as happens time and again, silenced or even eliminated. No, the fact that a new world order is being planned and that subversive forces are in process of establishing it is no longer a secret. There is now too much evidence of this, and one of its main representatives, the world banker and Bilderberger David Rockefeller, openly admitted this by saying this, I quote, "For over a century, ideological extremists from both sides of the political spectrum have taken advantage of well-publicized events to attack the Rockefeller family for the excessive influence they believe we exert over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing me and my family as internationalists and conspirators, working with others around the world to create a more integrated global political and economic structure, a world government, if you will. If that's the charge, then I'm guilty and I'm proud of it." End of quote. Speaking of conspiracy, yes, it is. And they tried to keep it secret for a long time. The same David Rockefeller admitted it, saying this, I quote, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other major publications whose editors-in-chief attended our meetings in the past and respected the pledge of confidentiality for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plans for the world if we had been in the public spotlight all those years. Now, however, our work is well thought out and ready to result in a world government. The supranational sovereignty of world bankers and an intellectual elite is surely preferable to the national self-determination that has been practiced in recent centuries." End of quote. I got this also in www.kreuzamhimmel.li. That means Principality Liechtenstein. And you can find it in various other websites. How comforting to know that Jesus is the victor. In between, I would like to quote the following promise of Jesus at this point. I quote Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 33. "In the world you are afraid, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." Now, chapter 11. Plans to reduce the world population. Yes, they exist. Under the title, "The Cabal's Agenda to Reset the Population," the website www.dieunbestechlichen.com, that means those who you cannot corrupt, contains some interesting comments. Humanity would repeatedly make the mistake of handing over its own responsibility to unknown negative and dark forces that present themselves to the outside world as philanthropic think tanks. These think tanks do the thinking for the masses and determine what is good and what is bad for humanity to achieve the highest possible profit for themselves in the end. A good example of this is the Club of Rome, keep that name, which was founded in 1968 on Rockefeller's estate in Bellagio, Italy, and is currently made up of 100 former and current heads of state, diplomats, scientists, economists, and industrialists. It goes on to say, quote, "Since the publication of the Limits to Growth in 1972, the Club of Rome has remained true to its anti-human and anti-lifeline to this day. Nothing has really changed. On the contrary, even in their latest reports, it is still written in black and white that there are too many people who are far overtaxing natural sources, which will very soon lead to the complete collapse of civilization. It's always the same blah, blah, blah. When it comes to climate change, the Club of Rome believes that the golden path is the complete abolition of humanity. One of the crude proposals is to pay women in industrialized countries a bonus of $80,000 if they have no children or at least only one. In brackets, remember China, one child, Mao Zedong. It is perhaps already the famous hint to significantly decimate the population over the next 10 years. End of quote. Really? Just only a conspiracy theory? No, dear ones. Only recently, former US Vice President Kamala Harris openly called for a population reduction. 3 billion would be good, she said. Later they said, well, it was just, she made a bad pronunciation. That's not really what she wanted to say. Come on. If she speaks of 3 billion would be good, that means that 5 billion should go, or in whichever way. Chapter 12. Georgia Guidestones. Maximum 500 million people should live on this earth. Another example and evidence that there are really people, elites, who think that we should reduce the world population. The fact that the sinister string pullers, namely certain elite circles, including the supposedly philanthropic Bill Gates, for example, want to reduce the world population is also proven by the infamous Georgia Guidestones monument in the state of Georgia in the USA. Figure 19, you see the granite monument, Georgia Guidestones in the state of Georgia in the USA with 10 rules. Now you see it when it was still okay on the left side. On the right side, when somebody bombed it in order to destroy it, it is assumed that the constructors themselves destroyed it because the voices that the Freemasons were planning a genocide were getting louder and louder. By the way, this monument was constructed in a village where many or even all people are Freemasons. Now, this is the wish and plan of those who are working towards a new world order. As already mentioned, they include World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab, who openly says, "You will owe nothing and be happy." Incidentally, for his aforementioned Israeli advisor Yuval Noah Harari, picture number 20, you see on that picture on the left side, the symbol for transhumanism, a man who is somehow, developing to become like a god or something in between man and God, or let me say a Superman. And on the right side, you see Yuval Harari, Noah Harari, an Israeli pseudo-humanist, I would say, and he is specialized for history and other matters. Now, Yuval Harari considers us as being merely useless eaters who will eventually have to be eradicated for the good of the planet. This elite circle also included the now deceased Freemason and former president of the German Bundestag, Wolfgang Schäuble. He gave an interview to the Hannoversche Allgemeine Zeitung, abbreviation HAZ, in August 2020, in the COVID period. In the HAZ of 21st of August 2020, Schwab stated that we should see the coronavirus crisis as an opportunity for Europe because, quote, resistance to change will decrease during the crisis. We can now achieve the economic and financial union that we have so far failed to achieve politically, end of quote. I, Roland Kläger, can only say we must finally wake up. Let us realize that this is not a pandemic as such, but it was rather a plandemic, and it is not over. No, the terror continues, precisely to drive humanity into a new world order through manipulation and deception. So we are heading towards a new world order, towards a total dictatorship and surveillance society. What does the Bible tell us about all those worrying developments? Question mark. Chapter 13. I talk now more about what the Bible says concerning all these things. Chapter 13. Prophet Daniel, from the Babylonian Empire until the Antichrist. In the book of Daniel, we can also already show figure number 21, especially in the chapters 2, 7 and 11, we learn in detail how history will unfold until the return of the Son of Man. Daniel was the man of God to whom the course of world history was revealed by God in a special way. In the key verse of the book of Daniel, namely chapter 2, verse 21, it says, quote, God changes the time and the hour. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and understanding to the prudent. End of quote. In the year 604 BC, the powerful Neo-Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar had a terrifying dream in which he saw a huge statue, a man with a golden head, silver chest, bronze belly, iron legs, and feet with toes made of clay and iron. You see on this picture on the left side, the head of gold represents the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar. That's it. It corresponds to, in chapter 7, the vision of Daniel to the lion. We will talk about that afterwards. The second phase is the breast and arms of silver, represents the Medo-Persian Empire. The Medes and the Persians, together, one empire. The third one, belly of bronze, the leopard, Greece, under Alexander the Great especially. Fourth phase, the legs of iron, which corresponds to the animal with 10 horns in chapter 7, which represents, as we will see later, the Roman Empire. Phase number 5, the feet with the 10 toes, clay and iron. In chapter 7, it's the beast with the 10 horns, the Roman Empire, which is to be resurrected in the end time. And between the 10 horns comes up another little horn, if you want, an 11th one, which symbolizes the Antichrist and his kingdom. And he is pronouncing blasphemous words against the Most High. And then you see on the picture, this picture number 21, on the right side, at the feet of the statue is a rock. This rock, is detached from a mountain and falls down in the valley and destroys the whole statue, which symbolizes that the rock who represents Jesus Christ will destroy all these enemy nations, hostile nations, and he will himself fill the world and rule over all the nations. That's Christ who comes on the clouds, and the Messianic millennial kingdom will start. Only Daniel was able to explain the meaning of the dream to the fearful king, because God had revealed it to him, namely that the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, would be followed by other kingdoms until, in the end, a rock would destroy the whole statue, it is all these earthly kingdoms, and then fill the whole earth itself. The rock, of course, as mentioned, refers to Christ, who is described several times in the Bible as the rock or the cornerstone. See Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. 1 Corinthians 10:4, the rock, is Jesus Christ. And 1 Peter 2, verses 4-8, Jesus the cornerstone. At his return, Jesus Christ will destroy all these earthly kingdoms, and himself will rule over the entire earth. You can read especially in Zechariah chapter 14, verse 9, in Revelation chapter 5, verse 10, and 20, verse 4-6, and Isaiah 24, verses 21-23. I quote at least Zechariah 14:9. It says, "And the Lord, Yahweh in Hebrew, shall reign over all the earth. In that day the Lord shall be only, and his name shall be only." Around 70 years after Nebuchadnezzar, at the time of the co-regent Belshazzar, he was the son of the King Nabonidus, Daniel himself had a dream. He saw 4 beasts rising out of the sea, one after the other. We come to picture number 22. You see these 4 beasts. They symbolize, in fact, exactly the very same kingdoms as those of the various faces of the statue in Daniel 2. The lion represents Babylon. The bear, Medo-Persia. You see the bear, you can read, is limping on one leg. That is because Persia was more powerful than the Medes. Kingdom 3, the Greece, a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. Why 4 heads? Because when Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was divided up among his 4 generals. And kingdom number 4, the beast with 10 horns, represents Rome. This corresponds to the 2 legs of the big statue. 2 legs because one leg is the Western Empire with capital city Rome, and the other leg, Eastern Empire, Byzantium, Constantinople. Now, the 10 toes of the 2 feet made of iron and clay of the statue correspond to the 10 horns of the 4th beast in Daniel chapter 7, verse 7-8. This represents the end-time Roman Empire, which is to be resurrected in the end time. It is still Rome, which is why it is said that the feet and toes are made of a mixture of iron and clay. And the 4th beast in Daniel 7, verses 7-8, has iron teeth. So it's still iron. The Roman Empire is to rise again at the end of time, because it is the returning Son of Man who will destroy it at the end of time when he comes on the clouds. In chapter 7, it's the Son of Man who comes on the clouds who will destroy them, those nations. And in chapter 2, it's the rock falling down from a mountain which is destroying the statue, that means all the nations, and he will himself fill the whole world and rule over the whole world. Compare this with the beast in Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 following. the beast with 7 heads, one of which is mortally wounded but miraculously healed. Figure 23, the beast in the middle, which has 7 heads. You see the one in the front, on its forehead, it has like a wound, which was then healed miraculously. On the left side, the dragon represents Satan, and on the right side of the beast is the false prophet with 2 horns and having like a skin of a lamb. That means, outside he looks like a lamb, but he's speaking with a dark, diabolic language, and he's performing miracles that humankind will believe him and will then worship the beast. And that's why on their forehead they bear the number 666. This picture, I have bought a whole series of the famous American artist Pat Marwinkle. Her website is www.revelationillustrated.com. I really can recommend you the whole series. I bought it and I use it often for when I explain the book of Revelation to my students, theological students. It helps to better understand what the book of Revelation says with its symbolic figures, If you see the pictures, you can better understand. Anyway, the solution for that beast can be found in Revelation chapter 17, verses 7 to 14, where it says that the heads of the beast refer to kings. These, in turn, represent their kingdoms, just as Nebuchadnezzar, the golden head of the statue of Daniel chapter 2, represented the Babylonian Empire. In Revelation 17, 10 to 11, it says that at the time of the Apostle John, 5 of the 7 kings or kingdoms had already fallen. And one is the sixth. And that this one must go into the abyss, but then come up again, but only for a short time. In other words, the 6th and the 7th are identical. In the history of Israel, the following empires were world leaders in turn, only to be defeated by the following empire. First, Egypt, which was conquered and destroyed by Assyria. Number 3, Babylon. They conquered Nineveh, Assyria. Number 4, Medo-Persia. They conquered Babylon. Number 5, Greece. Alexander the Great conquered the Medo-Persian Empire. Number 6, Rome of the emperors. And 7, the same, again Rome, but it's Rome, no longer of the Caesars, but Rome of the Antichrist, the Roman Empire of the end times that is to be reborn and whose leader will be the Antichrist. Rome was wounded, as you see on that picture, the head wounded. Revelation 13:3. It lost its world domination at that time, according to Revelation 17:8. It must rise again. However, according to Revelation 17 verses 10 to 11, only for a short time. This is for the time of the Great Tribulation, the time of the so-called 70th week of Daniel 9:27. The wounded head of the beast in Revelation 13 verse 3, which is miraculously healed, represents the Roman Empire, whereby the beast in the book of Revelation represents the Antichrist, who represents the Roman Empire, just as Nebuchadnezzar represented in the past Babylon at that time. In Daniel 7, 24 to 25, it says that another little horn will grow up between the 10 horns, which will utter blasphemous words against God and persecute the believers for one time, times and half a time. It is for 3.5 years. In Daniel, a time represents 1 year. You can check in Daniel chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar became crazy and was feeding in the meadows, in the fields, for 7 times, for 7 years, until he humiliated himself and God raised him up again in power. Now, and it says, that the beast then in the Revelation, will rule for a time, times and half a time. That means for 3.5 years. This is exactly what is confirmed in Revelation 13, 5 to 7. The beast, it is the Antichrist, the ruler of this last kingdom, will reign for 42 months. That means 3.5 years. And persecute the believers of that time. In Revelation 12, verses 12 to 17, it says that the dragon, that is Satan, will persecute the woman. This refers to Israel, because the 12 stars on her head in Revelation 12, 1 to 2, symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel. The woman in chapter 12, the book of Revelation, does not represent Saint Mary, as Catholic Church would pretend. And then they somehow, you can find many statues of Saint Mary with 12 stars on the head. This goes back to Revelation 12. No, this represents Israel. And it says that, the beast Satan will persecute the believers of that time. He will persecute the woman, Israel, and the believers, those who maintain the witnessing of Jesus Christ. And it says in Revelation 12, verse 14, that he will persecute them for a time, times and half a time, 3.5 years. This refers to the second half of the 7-year Great Tribulation. Satan will do this through the beast, through the Antichrist, to whom he will give power and authority. This is what it says in Revelation 13, verse 4, and the Apostle Paul confirms this in his second epistle to the Thessalonians, chapter 2, verses 8 to 9. I quote, "And then the lawless one," that is the Antichrist, "will manifest himself, whom the Lord Jesus will kill with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the appearance of his return, whose coming will be by the working of Satan, with every mighty deed and every sign and wonder of a lie." Now, according to Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, this ruler of the resurrected Roman Empire of the end time, the ruler of the Western Bloc, who will try to conquer the whole world, will make a covenant, a pact with Israel for a week, for 7, that means for 7 years. The so-called 70th week of Daniel, see Daniel 9, 24 to 27. He will promise Israel peace, but in the middle of the 7 years, he will break the covenant, and then persecution will set in, precisely for 3.5 years, as confirmed in the book of Revelation. See Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, and Revelation chapter 13, verse 5. Just as the pagan ruler of the so-called Seleucid Empire, Antiochus Epiphanes IV, based in modern Syria, made a covenant with apostate Israelites around 170 BC. In the same way, the Antiochus made a covenant with apostate Israelites around 170 BC, and then broke it and defiled the temple in Jerusalem, replacing the altar of burnt offerings with an altar in honor of the Greek god Zeus Olympus, and sacrificing pigs on it. The Antichrist will desecrate the end-time third temple in Jerusalem at the end of time and sit in it, claiming to be God himself. Jesus confirmed this by quoting Daniel 9 verse 27 in his end-time speech. I quote Matthew 24 verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, standing in the holy place, let those who read it take note. Then let those in Judea flee to the mountains. Jesus said this exactly after the words in Matthew chapter 24 verse 14, where he said, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So this incident, this event with the Antichrist, the ruler of the seventh kingdom, of the resurrected Roman Empire of the end time, refers to the end time. Jesus said that this relates to the end time. And not, for example, to the time only of the Emperor Titus, who destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70 AD. Now, because the Antichrist himself wants to be worshipped as God, he will no longer tolerate any regions and will therefore, according to Revelation chapter 17, verses 15 to 17, destroy the harlot Babylon, probably the end-time world unity religion. I show you here figure number 24, the three shrines of the three Abrahamic religions built in Abu Dhabi. We find the pictures in www.detail.de, but I have even friends who were there in Abu Dhabi and made a picture when they were building it. Anyway, the Apostle Paul also mentions the work of the Antichrist and his end, namely in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3 to 4. I quote, let no one deceive you in any way, for unless the apostasy has come first, and the man of enmity of the law has revealed himself, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or holy, so that he sits in the temple of God, claiming to be God, the day of the Lord cannot come. Now, in the following verse 7 in 2 Thessalonians 2, Paul says that before the lawless one, the Antichrist, can or will reveal himself, the one who is still restraining him, katechon in Greek, must first be taken away. Personally, I tend to think that this refers to the Church of Christ in which the Holy Spirit dwells. Through his church, the Lord is still holding back the manifestation of the Antichrist. We do this, or should do this, by being the salt of earth, which stops the progression of the evil one preemptively, so to speak. By the way, I made my theological master thesis in France, in the Faculté de Théologie Évangélique in Vaux-sur-Seine, on chapter 2 of 2 Thessalonians, verses 1 to 12, and the subject was, the one who is still restraining the lawless one, the Antichrist. We come to chapter 14. The countdown to Armageddon has begun. This end-time scenario of the various power blocks of the world is uniquely described by the prophet Daniel. In Daniel chapter 11, the whole story from the Medo-Persian kings to the final battle, which is called Armageddon in Revelation 16 verse 16, is revealed in Daniel 11. We learn more about this at the end of chapter 11 in the verses 40 to 45, or as already mentioned. Now, in this passage in the book of Daniel, the heavenly directions south, north, and east are mentioned, but not the west. Precisely, the Antichrist and his kingdom, his empire, comes from the west, from the Roman Empire that is to be resurrected at the end of time, and Roman Empire was and is the west. For Daniel says here that at the end of time, a ruler will invade the Holy Land. It is Israel with his army. He will then also attack the north of Africa, namely Egypt, Libya, and Kush, Ethiopia, and or Sudan, to gather treasures. For example, the oil of Libya? Question mark. Here is a little current insertion. Have you noticed what's been going on in the North Africa recently? How more and more countries are breaking away from the former colonial power France with its megalomaniac Macron and increasingly turning to Russia, Burkina Faso, Mali, and not long ago also the Republic of Niger. Algeria, by the way, is siding with Niger Republic. Libya is already divided into two parts, one of which is in a pact with Russia. Incidentally, after the fall of Assad government in Syria, at least some of the Russian troops that were stationed in Syria are said to have installed themselves in Libya. But let us go back to the Antichrist and his empire, the Western Bloc. After his invasion of Northern Africa, he is said to have suddenly been startled by rumors from the north and the east. This refers to the approach of armies from the north and the east. For the North Sea, Ezekiel 38 to 39, Gog and Magog from Rosh, from the extreme north. This probably refers to Russia, which actually lies in the extreme north of Israel. The east probably refers to China in particular. Compare this with Revelation 16 verse 12. The kings come from the rising of the sun. Daniel goes on to say that he, the Antichrist, will then go out to war against these armies from the north and the east. But that is where he will meet his end, without anyone being able to help him. This refers to none other than the end-time Antichrist, whom the Lord Jesus Christ will seize at his return, according to Revelation 19, verses 11 to 21. And he will cast him into the eternal lake of fire, it is hell, with the false prophet. Paul says the very same thing in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 8. Jesus will destroy the son of sin, the lawless one, the Antichrist, when he appears. I wonder if the Middle East conflict that has now flared up again is a foretaste of this. The US fleet is already patrolling off the coast of Israel and the Gulf of Aqaba, or the Red Sea. Russia and the USA already have military bases in Syria, and as far as the Chinese are concerned, they have now already clearly backed the Palestinians and maintain a base in Djibouti, coast of northern Africa. French President Macron, incidentally, like so many leading politicians, is a Freemason. Figure number 25. You see Macron and all these signs characteristically, for Freemasonry. Now, Macron recently said this in an interview. French, hein? La bête de l'événement est là. La bête arrive. I translate in English. The beast of the event is here. The beast arrives. One wonders, how is it that he knows that the beast is about to arrive?